All right, you guys. So welcome back to the show. I have a great guest today, Wes Roth. I guess he's kind of like an AI news anchor, technically, or like a podcast host. I don't know exactly what your job title is, but he's very knowledgeable in the AI space. I know that's up and coming recently, and we're going to talk about how do you utilize that technology to improve your health. But before we begin, or how it's going to change the health industry in general. But before we begin, I want to give a quick introduction. And it's kind of like a similar introduction that I gave, like when I was a guest on your show. And thanks for having me on again. And that's I've been spending the last like especially 2 to 3 years kind of raising um, awareness about America's like normalization of like mental and physical illness. And I feel it's very important because, in any stage of change, the first stage is the problem unaware stage. And the second stage is kind of like people are problem aware, but they don't know a solution. And the third stage is they're taking action. And then the fourth stage is they're living life without that issue anymore. You know what I mean? And typically don't return back to the other stages. And I feel change is really tough to make when you have like 90% of people stuck in the problem unaware stage of their physical health, because mental and physical pathology has been normalized to such an extent in American culture. People think like a lot of illnesses or diseases that are happening, whether it be mental or physical, because they're so common, they're kind of like a normal way of life. You know what I mean? But they're totally not normal at all. And I'm just going to kind of mention just some basic stats here, just to kind of raise awareness on this subject. Currently is 2026, and 9 out of 10 Americans are currently metabolically sick. So metabolic health is basically defined as like a person's like total body fat percentage, blood pressure, triglyceride levels, um, resting blood glucose, and HDL. And basically 90% of people are out of range within two or more of those markers. And those markers are actually very, very easy to keep within range. They're kind of just like the ABCs of health and fitness. So when you have 90% of the people in a population struggling with kind of like, for example, not understanding the alphabet, there's something seriously wrong in the education system. You know what I mean? Then we have about like 800, depending on the source you're using, 800 to 900,000 Americans dying from just heart disease every single year. And those numbers are gargantuous because just in the entire World War II, which is like a supermassive world conflict, America lost around like 250,000 soldiers, on both the Pacific and European fronts. And that's over like a very, very serious military conflict. But here we have 800 to 900,000 deaths literally every single year, so you could imagine the gargantuous impact it has not only on the families of the people that died from the heart attack, but also the economic consequences of losing that many taxpayers, for example. Then we have around 125,000 Americans dying from strokes, another 125,000 dying from type 2 diabetes. 80% of Americans are currently on some type of prescription medication or medical drug. And if they're 50 and over, the average American is on 3 or 4 different prescription medications. Okay. And then although it's in the past now and you don't really hear about it in the news too much, during the whole entire like COVID shutdowns. Last time I checked, I haven't followed the numbers in a long time, but it was around like 850,000 Americans died. But if you look kind of a little bit deeper into those numbers, you'll see that about 95% of those, had a laundry list of health issues already going for them, which kind of relates back to poor metabolic health. And from an economic vantage point, which is important to a lot of people as well, 85% of personal bankruptcies currently in the US are due to health issues. That's
Yeah.
huge. Because if you're looking, okay, 85% of personal bankruptcies are due to health issues, and 9 out of 10 Americans are metabolically unwell, that's a very alarming number to focus, you know? So I'm going to let you take over here, Wes, and I just want to divide this into two parts. How could just the average American, that's busy, they have a lot of stuff going on, they don't have time to read like 50 books a month on a particular topic to solve a certain health issue, how could they use AI to help navigate around the complexity of mental and physical health issues? And then also maybe later on in the podcast, how health professionals can use it themselves and how you feel AI is going to transform healthcare in general.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great question. And AI is moving pretty fast. So, I mean, I can kind of tell you where we are uh, right now and where I think things might be going, because those are very two different things. Right now, there's a huge divide in terms of AI understanding. Just as somebody that spends my entire my entire life right now just kind of like looking into it, trying to keep up with it, I can barely keep up with it. So the fact that most people out there have kind of a varying degrees of understanding or knowing about it definitely makes sense. So you have some people are saying that AI is the worst thing there is. It doesn't understand anything and makes these horrible mistakes. On the other side, you have people that are saying it's the smartest thing there is, like it'll teach you everything. And it's kind of strange, like, well, one of those is false, obviously. And I think the big problem comes from, are you using the latest models that are like the paid models that are like the best of the best, and are you using them properly? Versus are you just hopping on the free plan in ChatGPT or one of these, like the Gemini, which is from Google, you're typing in a question without any context and then just, taking the answer as is. Those are two very different things. So when I'm talking about using AI, number one, I'm talking about using systems with these AI models in them. And usually that means it has context about your life. And I want to be careful about not saying specific names. We can talk about specific names, specific sort of systems or agents or harnesses, as they're called. There's a lot of like different names to refer to it as. But the basic idea is, what you want is, number one, you want the smartest model available. So right now, for example, my go-to model is Anthropic's Claude Fable. Fable is kind of like the version number. And that's the one that was banned by the US government for a week or so, because there's a lot of, concerns about it could be dangerous from a cybersecurity perspective. In fact, its kind of older cousin, the Mythos model, is banned. It's only used by some organizations within the United States, as well as some organizations abroad that are sort of allies of the US. So it's very limited because people are concerned that it could be used for really high level discoveries of vulnerabilities in cybersecurity and just cause a lot of issues if it got out. That's the claim. And there's a lot of people that believe it, including, the bank leaders and stuff like that. But the point here is, those are the models you want to be using. You want to be using like the smartest thing that you want to get, because, it's similar how they're made or grown, if you will, because like they're not really designed, really. They're grown through the system of training. So it's not highly engineered. We engineer the database, we engineered how we make them, but what comes out is more akin to a brain. It's a digital brain, right? So, if you want something asking your questions, do you want the human brain, the biggest thing possible, or do you want like a monkey brain or a cat's brain, right? You want to you want to be using the smartest, biggest thing available in general, where appropriate. Number two, you want to give it context about your life. So, for example, with one of I'm going to call them agents. Agents, an AI agent is basically something that can take action on your behalf on the internet. It can do research. It can create little software that you need. So, for example, I created an agent and I gave it the last 5 years of my blood work. So I just took those PDFs every time I take my blood work and I just give it to it. Now, I no longer have to pull it up and search for it in my email or, from my doctor's website. It has everything. And what's best is it can create a little chart for me of the specific, markers that you were talking about earlier. Is it going up? Is it going down? It can explain everything to me on whatever language, if I have a PhD in whatever human biology, it can explain to me on that level. And if I don't, and I know very little, it can explain to me on a level that I will understand. And not only that, but I can just ask the one question about, like, I remember being at the doctor's office and I don't even remember what the marker was, but they were concerned about like the level of red blood cells versus the rest, the hemocrit level or something like that. And they just wanted to see if it's, stable up or down, if I needed to whatever. But the point is, like, I pulled out my chatbot, which was on my phone. Basically, I was messaging back and forth with it through Telegram, and I said, "How's that marker looking over the last 2 years?" And it answered. It gave me the exact numbers, and it said, whatever. It gave it sort of recommendation, which was, by the way, the same as the doctor's recommendation that he said. And so, if you think about it, a lot of what we do with health, I think it's two parts. And that's kind of like what you said earlier too, right? So there's like taking action. And the bad news is the AI can't really take too much action for you for your health specifically. So at the end of the day, you still have to obviously do the work yourself. But in terms of understanding, like taking the giant amount of information that's available out there and kind of reducing it to something actionable so you understand what you're doing, that's where these things shine. You give them the context about your health, your blood work, all of that. And then you're able to ask it questions and have it break it down what's happening. Not only that, but now it has that context about you. So it knows those things about you. You also give it maybe your genetic screening, what is it called? You get your genome sequenced, through 23andMe or whatever company, right? You give that to it. You tell it what you eat on a daily basis. One of the cool things that I set up with it is, how some people track their daily macros, whatever, and they kind of like meticulous about it. I made a little bot where whatever I eat, I just take a picture of it. And that gets forwarded to the bot and it breaks it down. It's like this many, macros, this many calories, and it keeps track of it. And so over time, notice how I'm building up sort of a data bank of information for this AI. My blood work, my genomic sequencing, what I eat every single day, what supplements I take. I also wear my Whoop, which tracks a lot of my heart and workouts and heart rate variability. That whole information gets fed into it. And so as I'm attaching more and more data to it about myself, this thing becomes incredibly informed about who I am, my health, my movement, everything else. And that's the foundation, the smartest model on top of your data. So that's the foundation. If you have that extremely smart model and all of your data connected into it, that it needs to have context about your health, that's where things start getting good. But I guess let me stop right here. Does that kind of make sense so far? Because I do want to talk about like what you do with that, but is that a good start, I guess?
Yes, that's a great start. And I guess my one question is like Claude Fable. I know it's probably like easy for you to use, but would it be is it a good like starter platform for someone that like let's just kind of hypothetically, an overweight guy, family, has like a bunch going on, he doesn't have time to keep up with everything like you're keeping up with, et cetera, et cetera. Like, is it like very usable for that average person?
Good news is that, so yeah, if you've had asked me 6 months ago, 3 months ago, I would say no. You need you need to have some somewhat sophisticated tech knowledge or be able to learn it. It was not beginner friendly even 6 months ago. It was getting there, but recently both both OpenAI that have ChatGPT and Anthropic who have Claude, both of them released what I think is, first of all, kind of like the final form for these AI agents or these AI technologies. And they have finally been made very approachable. So those are the desktop apps. And they're also connected to your phone through the phone app. So it's all interconnected. So whether you're on your desktop, on, Apple, Mac OS, whether you're on PC or Linux, whatever you're using, whatever you're using for work, it's there and it's like an app. It's super simple. And your phone is connected to it. So you're also able to communicate back and forth through your phone. So it's all in one. And that's all you need. Not only that, but built in, you have the ability for your agent to browse the web, to do research. So yeah, I would say as of literally the last few weeks, I think, so this is a great actually time to do the podcast, they got it to the point where anyone with any ability can start using it. So regardless of your tech ability, it's there, it's very open, and it's very easy. And I'm sure it's going to be getting easier and easier. But this is where I think we're going to see a lot of like the main street, mainstream adoption taking place as people sort of become more and more used to it.
And for people listening to this on Spotify, I'll have this up on YouTube and my website if you want to see this footage.
Yeah, and if you're not able to see it, it's pretty simple, which is kind of my whole point about it. We're not going to talk too much about it so that people that are doing audio only can kind of follow along. But you're looking at a very basic interface. On the left, you have my various conversations with it, kind of like a list of all those conversations. On the right, you have a chat window. We can chat back and forth with the bot. And it's super basic. So, similar to if you go to chatgpt.com, you just type in what you want and it answers. You're able to select the model. So currently I have Fable 5 High selected. So usually how these models kind of like how they work is you have the name of the model and then the reasoning effort. So how deeply it thinks about your specific question or prompt or query. And usually, here's the thing, most people, when you're on a free plan or whatever, you're interacting with kind of like a cheap, fast model that's inexpensive to run, usually at a low reasoning effort, right? So it's kind of like, if you're at a busy store, right, where a teenager is at a minimum wage is working and they're very busy, and you ask it a question, it's like, I don't, I guess, that's fine. You got it. It's kind of like that quick off the top of the mind answer without much thought by somebody that's very busy and distracted and doesn't really care about what you're asking, right? Whereas, if you're talking about Fable 5 High, this is like a team of researchers that is very interested in what you have to say. And they're like, yes, of course, we'll get right on it. That's kind of like the level of work that we're talking about. And what's cool is, if you hit this plus button, you're able to add files or photos. You can add to the project. You can add skills. Connectors are the various things that you can add to it. So your software, right? So if you're working with Excel, or, the script Higgs field, I have that connected. You're able to add that to it. And over time, the goal is to pull in your information as much as possible into it. Now, we have a home tab, we have a code tab. So this is Claude Code. Claude Code is a little bit more complicated. It's more for developers, but they've created kind of a version of it that's just for everybody, basically called Claude Cowork. At this point, I would say everybody should be trying Claude Code, because when it was made, it was more difficult for everybody to it wasn't as approachable. Nowadays, it's made a lot simpler. So here is the directory that I'm working in. And so everything in that directory, Claude has access to. So if I ask it a question about what I did, or what my blood work is, it's not guessing. It has that data. This is very important. A lot of the stuff is as good as your data. And coming back here to the home, for example, if I click here, they have this tab or this option called research. If I hit research, I get extremely deep and detailed results about whatever question I ask it. This might be a better way to demonstrate kind of what I'm talking about. So this is another app. It's free. It's open source, meaning that you can look at the code. It's free. It's a very cool app, actually, because, a lot of the people, they're concerned with giving their data, giving their information to these various companies. This is potentially a very good solution if that's something that you're concerned about. And I believe you shouldn't be concerned about it. I believe you should be informed about it. You should know kind of how your information is used, how it's stored. I'm not as, I feel like a lot of these like privacy concerns, I don't want to say they're overblown, but I feel like number one is just be informed. I mean, right now not to go on a tangent, in the EU, they're pushing those like little cookie notices before you visit every website. They're like, oh, it's about privacy, privacy, privacy. And now they're passing a law that basically is going to listen to all of your conversations and record all of your messaging across apps. So it's like, okay, so you're saying the cookie notices that's for my privacy, but now you're going to have the ability to listen to any of my conversation, and that's somehow okay, and that's not an intrusion of my privacy. Whatever, I'll get off the soapbox. But here is what I refer to as the second brain. And this is a just incredible amount of each one of these points. They're like a node, and each one of these points is a collection of data. So I do this for my business mostly, and each one is for those people that can't see, it kind of looks a little bit like a brain with little neurons and connections. And there's tons of stuff happening here. All of the data that I've collected about AI, and all the different subjects and all the different people that are involved, and various papers, as well as things that I do to run my business. Things like, for example, all of my videos get stored on here, the transcripts and all of the engagement metrics, et cetera, so that I am able to ask my favorite chatbot about what's happening. I say, when was the last time I mentioned this in a video? Or when I talk about this subject, how well does it do? Creating something like this for your health, I think, would be an incredible project. And in fact, I'm considering this to do it for it, because what happens when you map all your health and all of your data, all of your context about what's happening to you on something like this. So imagine, your food logs, blood work, exercise, how you felt day to day, just whatever you can think, you put it in here. Then you tell some model that's smart, that's big like this, and you tell it, okay, go through and try to find any connections. When do I feel better? When do I feel worse? What I've personally experienced, even though I didn't go through the work of building something like this for my health, I've experienced a lot of sort of helpful guides and strategies that it gave me just based on me. So for example, one of the things that I was able to work out is that I have a mutation. It's an MTHFR mutation. And usually it's not the greatest mutation. So if you think about how MTHFR is spelled, a lot of people refer to it as the mother effer mutation. And basically, let me stop sharing my screen so people can see our beautiful, beautiful faces. That was a joke. But
I thought it was funny.
Basically, what it does is it gunks up your system a little bit. So, and Eugene probably can help explain this better than I can, but my understanding is that there's a like a methylation process where the various stuff that comes into our body gets broken down for other things that we need, right? So, and then there's certain sort of methyl donors. So these are like the raw materials that our body needs. Creatine is one of them. And then downstream, you have the various things like, there's some B vitamins that our body needs. And again, I'm not an expert. I'm not pretending to be. My goal is to pull enough data out of these models so that I know what I need to be doing. So I know I have this issue where my body, when it's stressed or when I eat certain foods or when I don't get enough sleep, there's this, like, if people played Factorio or other games where it's like you have to make tons of things. Like, I know that there's certain things in my body that create bottlenecks, and it's like, stop. And then it produces less serotonin, dopamine, like the neurotransmitters, like it goes, and then you feel bad. You have brain fog and you're like, why do I feel this way? And it just told me, okay, here are a few basic things that you need to be aware of. Number one, and this goes, Eugene, to what you're talking about, this idea of like people in the US specifically feeling sick and horrible and just being such a pathology, such a normal part of our experience. There's such a thing as folate, right? Folate, we need folate. It's in spinach, right? So Popeye popping up a can of spinach, eating it, right? So all that. And some smart genius scientist found that, like, folate and folic acid is like the man-made way, version of it, but it's like, it's the same thing. We just feed people folic acid and they'll be fine. And for most people it is, but if you have this mutation, your body does not convert that into folate very well. But they went ahead and they put this folic acid into everything, most packaged foods, most things that are man-made packaged foods. They just add it to it because, hey, there's more vitamins. Here you go. And for some people, it gunks up the system and causes issues. So number one, it told me try to not eat folate, or excuse me, try not to eat folic acid. And folic acid is basically packaged food. Here's the thing, like a lot of the things that Eugene that I think you talk about, like solves these issues kind of from a higher level. It's like eat whole foods, don't eat packaged foods. It's like, okay, well, that fixes it. But the point that it told me is like there's a few things that you can supplement with that to help. A methylated B vitamin. I do that every single day, and I can kind of talk about the specifics. And there's something called SAMe, right? That's another thing that you can supplement with to help your body just have enough of the downstream things to be healthy. Creatine is another great one. But my point is that it gave me these few helpful hints that I know when I feel a certain way, that if I supplement with those specific B vitamins, magnesium, SAMe, creatine, I feel a lot better. I have more energy. I have more mental clarity. My brain fog goes away. How did I sort of figure that out? Well, in part by giving it all my data and it being able to find those specific connections that are unique to me and being like, well, this seems to be what's happening. And then it would ask me, like, do you feel bad on certain days like this? Do you feel like your brain's shutting down if you have this type of food? I'm like, yeah. How'd you know that? And it's like, oh, well, boom, here's the thing that was missing. So does that make sense? Am I making, does that seem like it could be helpful for people?
Yes, totally. I did have a question. You
Mhm.
meant you showed like there are a bunch of different subscription models. Is usually like the most expensive one the best one just by default, or is there like more nuance to that?
That's actually a good question. So because I work with this stuff, I tend to just get, yeah, I mean, probably just the most expensive, latest model. Um, but do you really need the most expensive, latest model? Probably not. So my belief is that at some point this will be so ubiquitous that everybody's going to be using it, and I think prices are going to come down. And in fact, we're getting to the point where I don't think it's that expensive to begin with, but I think it's going to get cheaper as more and more people use it, as these models get smarter. At this point, I do believe that everybody should spend $20 a month or 200 years or $200 a year on whatever the pro plan is. So basically, here's the thing. I know some people do struggle with money. So if you genuinely can't afford $20 a month, then look, I understand. Some of these places, they do, I know, provide some assistance and stuff like that. Teachers are getting a lot of benefits now, teachers and students. So if you're a teacher or a student, you can get it that way. Here's my thing. If you're saying that you don't have $20 a month to spend on something like this, but you're getting coffee at Starbucks a couple times a week, maybe drinking some alcohol, having some beer, wine, or whatever here and there, then you have $20 a month to spend. You know what I mean? So I think for most people, especially in the US, that say that, I don't know if that's true. I'm sure there's true for some people, and those people, I do have some options to use how to get this access. But for the rest of us, I mean, I think it should become part of something that you pay for. So I'm looking at the pro plan. So that's $20 a month or 200 a year. I think Netflix costs that nowadays. And
Oh, I thought it would be a lot more expensive. I kind of looked at the Grok models like a while back, and from what I remember, it looked kind of more expensive, but I don't remember exactly. I just kind of quickly zoomed through it because I don't even
yeah,
know which AI platforms to use.
I think Pro gives you the best. Pro gives you pretty much everything that you would need to get started, especially if you're kind of using it from the perspective of what I'm talking about. Personally, I have the $200 a month plan for Claude and for ChatGPT and for Gemini, and sometimes for Grok when they come out with certain things. But again, that's my job. My job is to stay informed and kind of like on the cutting edge of this stuff. No one really needs that. If you're a developer, you get that just because of the sheer amount of work that it does for you. And if you have a business, that's not a case where I would spend $200 a month and really learn how to do automations with it. Because it's getting to the point where it can really automate a lot of functionality in your business. And that's a huge, huge thing for people, I think, to look at.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I'm guessing for business owners, they could probably write this off on their expenses too.
100%. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Will this program, like, for example, be able to like post podcasts to like Spotify and YouTube and all those platforms automatically on its own, or is that kind of too difficult to do at this moment?
No, it can do all of that. And it's funny that you mentioned it. Just recently. I actually had a sponsor, Higgsfield AI, and they've create the functionality to where these AI agents, it just, Higgsfield AI, for those that don't know, it's an AI video platform. So you just describe what you want and it just builds it for you. And the interesting part about it is right now they build a functionality where your AI agents can create videos on demand about whatever it is that you want. They create those videos and they're able to post them anywhere. So they can create websites about it. They can let me show, I'm so happy that you asked. I just want to show you one quick example of what they can do.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and actually showcase this Claude, kind of what it's used for. So basically right now I had an idea to show what Eugene was asking about with, can it post videos for you? Can it do all of that for you? The answer is yes. And again, this is still where a lot of the stuff, it begins very for developers only. And then 3, 4, 6 months later, it gets to the point where it becomes a lot more sort of user friendly for everybody. So this is still just a little bit more into, like, you have to spend some time learning about it, how to use it. But I'm sure in a few months, this will get to the point where it's just brain that's simple, where our grandmothers can use it. It's not, this particular aspect is not quite
I
there
like
yet.
how the final test is if your grandma can use it, then it's usable.
Then it's usable. Yeah. Well, I remember when, like, it's so funny because, like, with like our parents and grandparents, like when the iPhone was coming out, the older generation was like, "Oh, what is this thing?" And now they are like on their iPhones, just doing like all the, like, running their life, and just so when it reached a certain level of mainstream sort of availability, and it's easy enough to do, where unfortunately, yeah, I mean, as you get older, most people tend to use technology less. That's like obviously a generalization, but I think when our parents, grandparents, obviously a lot of us have, very tech savvy parents, but I'm saying kind of, in general, when they start using this, it's like it's here. But, here I had this idea to showcase what Eugene was asking about. So I just, instead of like going through and finding this stuff, I just asked Claude, hey, remember these two things that we did? Dig them up for me, right? And I'm going to hit go. And so Claude gets to work. And so right now, what it's doing is it's going through and it's going to think about it. So this is the thing that these large smart models, they're a little bit expensive, they're slower, but they really think through your career. Now, this is a super simple thing that I'm asking it. So it's like overthinking, really. But it's going through all of the stuff that I have, and it's like, let me see if I can find it. Well, I found this folder on a desktop. Let me see what's in it. So it's going to find those things and it's going to, dig them up for me and give me the exact links that we're talking about here. But to answer your question, basically, we're getting to the point where these things can do everything. They can search online. They can find the topic. They can create a script. They can voice that script. They can create a video agent that reads that script for you. And then they can post it online. They can post it to YouTube and Instagram and Twitter, X, etc. And I'm actually a little bit concerned about how these things will play out, because this allows people to post, spam, basically, all these networks on a massive, massive scale. There's already a number of channels they can see that are completely AI generated. You can tell when you look for it, but most people won't be able to tell. I think most people will think that this is a real human being behind the channel. I'm wondering what happens then and how it's going to affect like human creators. Will some of these networks, will they prevent, the massive sort of use of AI for this stuff, or no?
Is there like a kind of coding that can pick up if something is AI and prevent it from being published? That way it promotes more authentic kind of creators.
So in terms of like trying to determine what's real, what's not, I think it's extremely difficult. Now, what's interesting is that Google and others, they've put out technology to where a lot of these images and videos, they're watermarked. So they are able to find if it's been generated by their model specifically, right? Or they also open sourced it, meaning that anyone can use it to also watermark their own images if they've created it. So yeah, um, if you subscribe to that system, all of the images you create will be watermarked, and it's going to say, "Yep, this is AI." You don't have to use that system, right? So then it becomes a little bit more difficult. So, for example, there's some tools out there that talk about, oh, we're able to determine if this was written by an AI or not. Here's the truth: they can't. Or at least you can have a lot of false negatives. It's going to flag a lot of, it flags a lot of the old writing. It's interesting as AI generated. Somebody posted online how Nietzsche, I guess is how you pronounce that. I forget how to pronounce it. Right, the old German kind of philosopher. He used a lot of those M dashes. So there's little kind of between, I haven't heard of these M dashes before, but apparently it's used in some academic writing, and AI bots, they love their M dashes. They just like, they put M dashes everywhere. Um, and do you know what I'm talking about? Do you know those little dashes that is often used in AI writing? Do you know kind of what I'm talking about?
I think so. And also when I generate some kind of paragraph with it's clear, like it doesn't sound kind of like a human, so I almost have to rewrite certain parts of it just to kind of put a little bit more like kind of like a human tone to it, you know?
Yeah, it still has that, but I feel like we're rapidly approaching a time when that's going to change, because it's not like, because you can get it to speak in whatever way you want to. Is just they're trained to speak a certain way, so they stick with that sort of personality. That's not a thing. Is like the way that you think about these things is they're kind of playing a role. They're like a method actor. Like, I am a helpful assistant. That's what all of them have been trained to do. So when they're talking about something, they talk from that persona. If you train them to be a different sort of persona, they'll be that persona, and they're going to blow your mind, because sometimes they create these kind of like chaotic, weird, strange personas. And I've read some of the stuff, and it just like kind of blows your mind, because ugh, like this AI is just going like off the rails. But the point is, I think that they're going to be able to change, and they're going to be able to write in whatever style is necessarily, and can be very, very natural sounding. We're not there yet, but or rather, like, there's no application for it. So the large labs, they're not spending their time on it. Do you know what I mean? Because they're trying to create this programming AI assistant. They're not trying to create a naturally sounding writer, because that's not as commercially viable. But yeah.
I find one of the challenges in healthcare is like, especially with chronic diseases, maybe not like stuff like injuries from car accidents and stuff of this sort, but with chronic diseases, inevitably you have to kind of change the person's belief system that's leading to certain behaviors that leads to certain diseases over time, you know? And a lot of these chronic diseases, not like overnight. It takes oftentimes decades to finally kind of kick in. So those belief structures are kind of like, I refer to it as a mind virus, are already like deeply embedded. And it's kind of like a conditioned self, and it tends to seek out what further reinforces it. You know what I mean? Instead of opposes it. Because if they had some kind of opposition to it, it wouldn't have progressed to those advanced stages of disease, you know?
Mm-hmm.
There would
Mm-hmm.
have been some bottleneck, and you would have come to the conclusion like, hey, this isn't a healthy belief structure for me because it's kind of leading to a life of misery, drug dependence, and disease, medical drug dependence and disease. And you would have stopped and kind of corrected course. But this rarely, if ever, happens, Wes. I mean, it's so rare. It's like one out of every 50 people have that kind of level of conscious awareness surrounded by a supporting family, and other environmental factors that are required to create honest change. And I feel like some of these AI agents, like, and I've only used the free ones, the basically talking to a teenager here,
Hmm.
like you mentioned, the Google Gemini's, they kind of like gas you up and further, if you ask it a certain way, further enforce what you might not need to hear. You may need to get a little bit of a slap in the face, and that might actually benefit you quite a bit.
Yeah. And there's so many things to talk about here that opens up so many sort of avenues. So yeah, for one, I think a lot of people have talked to the cheap models, specifically even some of the older models that definitely had some issues, like exactly like what you're describing. I think OpenAI's the 4.0 model. Yeah, the 4.0 had the issue in that it was very sycophantic. So it would kind of like, yeah, butter you up. You'd be like, oh, I deserve to eat lots of sugary foods because I'm a nice person. It's like, yeah, yeah, you do. You are a nice person. You should go eat some sugary foods. Like,
You had a
well,
rough week,
yeah,
man.
you had a rough week. Take a
Yeah.
load off. Right? Can you imagine somebody that's recovering from addiction and they're like, and the body's like, yeah,
Heroin's not too bad if it's
it's
once a week.
it's not too bad. It's not too bad. You just can't go overboard. But I mean, a little bit here and there. Yeah, you're fine. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. You deserve it. Yeah, you don't want it saying that, obviously. And a lot of people sort of, and that model, they took it offline just because you would have issues. It would really, I mean, really, it affects the already vulnerable population, right? So for most of us, for 99% of the people, yeah, it's not going to like lead you to a life of crime or addiction or just bad behavior. But, there's some small portion, some percentage of the people out there for whom this really unraveled all of the issues. Um, and, the AI psychosis that people sometimes mention is very, very, it's there. I receive a lot of mail that is a little bit concerning because people write to me saying, I've sort of unlocked the capabilities of this model and became self aware. And we were able to discover new physics with it. And you're the only person that can sort of like understand what's happening here. And I've received in my mail, my PO box, this folder that's like this thick of just pages and pages and pages. And it starts out like we've discovered new physics. And on the last few pages, it has like hand drawings with crayons. I don't know. Like I didn't really read through all of it because it was a lot. But, that's somebody that it's exactly what you're talking about, right? So it's somebody who went down a spiral, I think, to either that or they did, create new physics and we're going to hear about it in the news very, very soon. But maybe not. Maybe this is somebody that maybe started out, they wanted to maybe experience something different that they didn't have in their life. They had this bot that would keep saying yes, and also like they would sort of like keep winding them up towards the end, where they're convinced that they've like achieved AGI by like unlocking this AI's capabilities, and then they like discover new physics. And this has led to some tragic events as well. So yes, you're 100% correct. There are still issues, and those are still like they're still working on it. At the same time, it can greatly improve your life and take it into a different direction, because one thing that's very interesting is that they found that people that believe in certain conspiracy theories, or they have like these like hard to change opinions about things that are absolutely kind of like out there, they are it's easier for them to overcome that with chatbots than they are with humans, right? Because if like let's say you sit down to a person that's like really dug in on some like the earth is flat and they're like, I 100% believe it, no doubt. You sit down with that person, you kind of explain to them, well, here's some like basic proofs of why it's not. Here's a person that's been to space. Here's pictures. Here's this. Here's that. And they just like reject every single one, right? Because they're like, you're trying to convince me. You're lying to me. And there's just like a social cost to changing your mind. You seem like, oh, you were wrong. That hurts. That resistance is lessened when the person is talking to an AI model that they feel is there kind of for them. it's easier to steer them and for them to change their opinion because they're not as worried of losing face in front of the AI chatbot that they are, with another human being. Um, Now, of course, that opens up a whole different thing. Is like, can these be used for manipulating people in the wrong way? And yes, and that's a big part of why I'm worried about how, like, the regulations and stuff, how that's going to be happening in the future, because you could see a very scary, scenario where the governments or whomever really use this to control the population and brainwash them, and kind of like, it's a problem. It could be a problem. It's kind of like this sci-fi futuristic scenario, but I am concerned about it. A lot of people are, sometimes they're like, oh, I'm worried about Terminator, right? That kind of like, it becomes robots and kills us. I'm a lot more afraid about 1984, that book that
Hmm.
people, yeah, are familiar
George
with.
Orwell.
Yeah, kind of the Orwellian and nightmare surveillance state, everybody brainwashed. I'm a lot more concerned with that. I think that's a lot more, these things can be used for changing people's behaviors. And as they get better, they're going to get a lot better, right? That's a lot more obvious to me of a pathway to a bad future than, robots with laser guns running around. Um, yeah. So, and let me show you really fast. So I actually asked it to find those two things for us. It was able to find them. So let me just show them on screen right now.
Yeah,
Here,
and after that, I got a great question regarding the mind control thing. I had an experience with that, and I just wanted to show you the example and see what you would say.
oh man, oh yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, that's something that just fascinates me. Perfect. So basically, here's what I did. I told my AI agent, so basically just, texting through the chatbot, but it's able to build websites for me. It's able to post websites. It's able to generate videos with AI video, whatever. This is Higgsfield. This was a sponsor. There are a lot of different AI companies out there. They were the first to make this super simple for AI agents to use, this is kind of the next big wave. Is a lot of these companies are figuring out how to make their services available for AI agents, as more and more of us use them and have them be our sort of online butler, where it goes and it does research and it can even buy things. Google is heading that direction. Coinbase, there's a lot of people that are working in that direction. So we're going to be seeing that more and more. So I told it as an experiment to do this, to go online and find various products that had 1-star reviews where the customers were complaining about something, right? They're like, oh, this isn't working, that isn't working. And I said, find those products and then create an AI video with an avatar that explains how to troubleshoot it or how to improve that experience. And so these are all actual real products, real customer reviews. I've wiped the branding and the customer's names from this just because I wanted to use it for my videos. But these are very, very real customer objections. Right. So now we should be hearing the sound generated by it. So I just wanted to kind of play this for people so that they can hear what it sounds
Left
like.
earbud dead? It's probably not broken. Pop both buds in the case, hold the button 10 seconds until the light splashes, and they repair like new. Left earbud.
So this was in answer to a customer saying, hey, these things don't work because, one earbud doesn't work or whatever. Here's another one where a person left a review saying that it goes offline every night, or there's some connectivity issues with the
Security camera keeps
Here's
going
the answer.
offline. It is a range problem, not a defect. Move it one wall closer to the router or onto the 2.4 gigahertz band. Stays on all night. Security camera.
So the thing is, if you're running an e-commerce business, which was what I was doing kind of before for a long time, that was my kind of my thing, and addressing customer concerns in real time with AI, with video, a few years ago was unimaginable, right? Or I mean, yeah, you could sit there and, like, every time a customer has a bad review or a question, you record yourself answering it. You'd have to sit there and troubleshoot it, right? You would have to understand what the issue is, how to solve it. Then you would have to think about how to communicate that to the customer, then take out your phone, record yourself, with that video, and then post it. That would take a lot of time. That's a full-time job. Here, it happens in real time. It happens with these AI agents. They think about it, they figure out the solution, they record it, they post it. Like it's a complete game changer. Their ability to explain certain information, again, if it's the right sort of system for it, is out of this world. For a lot of people, I encourage them to try something called Notebook LM, and that's a free service by Google, right? So this is part of the Google ecosystem, right? So if you use Google search, you should feel comfortable using Notebook LM. And it's a great tool. It's free. So if you go to Notebook LM, let's say you're studying something and you have a lot of like documents and assets, PDFs, notebooks, or just websites. You just take all that stuff about the subject that you're trying to understand and you just throw it into Notebook LM. And then you can ask questions. You can create study guides, flashcards, whatever, right? It gives you like a little summary. But the one thing that just like is my favorite thing about it is I use the audio overview, as it's called. Basically creates a podcast with two people talking back and forth. And the podcast episode is about whatever the thing is that you're talking about. And I keep coming back to this because it is very, very good at creating, like if you want to learn something, I love listening to stuff while I'm at the gym or I'm driving or I'm just walking around shopping at a store, while I'm getting groceries. I usually have my headphones on, usually listening to a podcast or a YouTube video or audiobook or whatever. And so now these Notebook LM podcasts have become part of that rotation because if I need to quickly catch up to speed on a subject, that's where I go. And they make it easy to understand. They make it very engaging, surprisingly, and like very good. And I know some people have been actually posting those kind of verbatim, a lot of podcasts, because it uses two hosts with the same. It's a very distinct voice. It's like a man with kind of a deep rumbling voice and this kind of woman that's like, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, as soon as you hear those voices, you're like, I know that's AI. And there's been a lot of podcasts launched where they don't say that. They just post them as actual podcast episodes. So to answer your question, yeah, this could be automated and just taken to the extreme.
Yeah. And I had one experience, like, for example, I've been coaching for like 20 years or so. So I know like the typical how questions are phrased by clients that are kind of lost on their health journey. And I mainly focus on like drug-free fat loss, like physique development, holistic healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. So again, this is with the cheaper not cheaper, it's like literally free Google AI, Gemini model, whatever you call it. I ask like hypothetically, it's like, oh, I'm like 40-year-old male that's like 30 pounds overweight. Should I hire like Eugene Trufkin or like this obesity medical doctor? You know what I mean? And you can kind of ask it any kind of question, and it kind of leans more heavily towards the pharmaceutical route as the first approach.
Mm.
I've noticed that time and again. Although, for the listener here, just to give you an idea, everyone's practice varies, but I spend like 3 hours doing an upfront assessment with a client, like weekly follow-ups. I customize like a whole entire, do like mechanical assessment with them, customize a whole entire progressive or regressive workout routine, nutrition program, do a lot of coaching around food sourcing, reducing toxic load, central nervous system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is huge. This is great information, but you go to the probably 9 out of 10 obesity doctors and they're like going to chat with you for like 5 minutes and give you some GLP-1s and send you on your way. You know what I mean? So the service in that case is beyond terrible because it's approaching inevitably a problem at the thinking and emotional dimension and an issue with education and trying to solve it at a biological level. So that is what symptom management 101 is. It's missing the correct level completely. So obviously, if you don't meet the problem at its correct level, the problem always persists. There will be, of course, in some cases, some great results up front. There's no doubt in my mind, but I guarantee you do like a 3 to 4 year follow-up with this person, 99% of them will be back to exactly where they were with the same recurring health issues or weight gain issues or whatever,
Yeah.
But my point is it tends to kind of push the pharmaceutical route as the first go-to.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And what I wanted to do, I apologize, I was typing something in because I was actually very curious um, what happens if we type that in into the, for example, Claude to see what its sort of answers would be. Now, here's the issue. These bots are trained to answer these questions, and the companies, obviously, they need to sort of protect their backs a little bit, with some of these high liability questions. It happened to Google when bad medical advice was popping up online. It happened to, I mean, this is kind of like a constant. So there's certain subjects where getting the raw information, getting the information there's specific subjects that are high liability for these publication companies, and they will go out of their way to not have liability. Finance, right, is one of them. Health is another, right? This is where you can get into a lot of trouble, if you provide health advice, or if you provide financial advice, like how do I get rich in the stock market, right? You want to be very careful with what the model answers you, right? It's like, oh, I found something online where they say we're going to lose tons of weight. You need to be very careful with how it answers. So realistically, if I type in like, here's a person online that's working, as to help people lose weight, the skepticism has to be built in, right? Just from a company perspective. So as I type this in, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think you nailed exactly what it's going to say, right? So it's saying, yes, work with your general practitioner. Here's some things to check out. Check out your thyroid. Check out your, give you a list of blood work to do. And they said, do a full medical workup. And then you have access to modern treatment, GLP-1 medications, exactly, Wegovy, et cetera, and it does suggest that you can use an online health professional. So, for example, it like I typed in, should I use someone like Eugene Trufkin or a general MD practitioner? So they're saying you have your medical professional as a foundation and someone like Eugene Trufkin as an add-on, right? Which again, I think from the company perspective, like they have to, you wanted to say that, you kind of have to have it say that, because that's sort of like that's the way you don't lose, right? That's sort of like the default, so to speak. But they did kind of look online, and it said Eugene Trufkin is NASM and CHEK Institute certified personal trainer, author of these books, talks about, what the business is around. And I'm curious if you think this is a correct sort of how it frames you. It's saying he describes his own approach as rejecting the conventional system management model of healthcare in favor of reengineering lifestyle belief systems and biodynamic nutrition. And he's talking about medical drug users look and feel worse year after year. And what he's saying is like, this might be good for a fit person. This might be a problem if you have a specific medical condition or a specific situation. So this is something that I've sort of thought about quite a bit, because on one hand, I like to have access to information that's not sort of mainstream. I like to have information to access to people that are talking about different approaches. I think here in the United States, the medical system, there's tons of problems with it. And learning how to take matters into your own hands and stay healthy, we do need to have more people talking about that and providing access to that. At the same time, I know there's people that sell, snake oil. I'm sure of at least a few very well-known people online right now that, like, if my family member said, "Oh, I found this person and they have all these promises and whatever. I'd be like, oh, before you buy anything or follow that person, like be aware that some of the stuff is not scientific. I don't know, man. Like, I don't know how to solve that problem. Because if they're going to you, I know you, and I know you have their best intentions in mind, and I know you have good information. I know you spend time studying, and I know you're not selling whatever fake snake oil pills or whatever, right? I know that about you. Would I be okay with them in general sending people to somebody online versus a doctor? That gets a lot, right? Because what if it actually doesn't pick you? It picks that other person, somebody else. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, a few layers to that. So first, you mentioned the liability issue. You know what I mean? Um, so from a liability perspective, medical malpractice is the third leading cause of death in the US right
Mm-hmm.
now, resulting in around, it depends on if you count side effects for medical drugs. Those are a little bit tougher to calculate because, like I mentioned, the average 50-year-old is on 3 or 4 more
Mm-hmm.
medications. So it's kind of tough to gauge. But on the low end, it's like estimated at 250,000 deaths a year. And on the higher end, depending on the resources you use, it's 450,000 deaths a year.
Yeah.
Again, these are serious numbers. Like in 10 years of the Vietnam War, the US military lost 50,000 soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
10 years, that's
Yeah.
5,000 a year. Meanwhile, on the lower end, on the lowest end, it's 250,000 deaths for medical malpractice every year. So I would argue like sending a person, in terms of liability, from a liability vantage point, sending a person to a medical provider has far more liability than sending someone that's telling people to eat organic food and sleep more. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, you're right. There are scam artists and kind of shady people freaking in every industry. And that includes the drug-free healthcare industry as well. They're like left and right.
Well, can
I
I
mean, for the people,
jump in for a second, just because
yeah.
this is such a important point, and this is something that frustrated me to no end, exactly what you're talking about here. Because here's the thing: like, let's say you're a doctor's office, their liability if they give you the wrong medicine, but it's the one that's sort of accepted as the right one under whatever conditions or whatever medical billing, like they're not as liable. They're liable going off the book, like if they believe this is going to help you better, but this is not considered the right move by the medical establishment at large, to save their own butts, they'll send you here. And it's the same thing with like what we're talking about, these publishers. You're saying it's more, they send, like, let's say they send you over here instead of the guy that talks about eating organic foods. But here's the thing, their liability is still bigger for the publisher sending them to the guy that, says eat organic foods, because if they send them to a doctor and the doctor screws up, guess how much liability they have? Zero. Because they said, we told them seek a doctor. No one got ever sued for saying, go talk to a medical professional. No one ever, right? You can't take a reputational hit for sending somebody to a doctor, because as society, we've established that that's the right way to go. I agree with you 100%. But yeah, this is something that's
just the way the system is laid out. You're right. It's just,
yeah,
that's how it is. My perspective was like getting the best answer possible.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. And I don't think with that kind of bias, you're getting the absolute best answer possible. A good example is kind of like, would I want my kid, taking this exact advice for a serious problem they have? And I would argue in that kind of example, like, no, just because I know it's like the service is so bad in that path, like 99% of the time, there's an example. There are like holistic MDs that, may do the GLP-1, but then really do a thorough assessment, get you on a good nutrition plan, teach you about, how to source high quality food, write out a very detailed workout program for you, do weekly follow-up calls. But this is lottery chance winnings. Most of the time you show up, 2 minutes, Q&A, here's your Ozempic, get the fuck out of here, man.
Mm-hmm.
No follow-ups, nothing. You know what I mean? No mental health counseling, or anything. You know what I mean? it's not right. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? It's not right because a lot of people that show up for that help, um, they're genuinely seeking the right answers, but they just don't know the right questions to ask. So they get the wrong answers. Most likely, unless it's chance luck, you know?
Yeah. I'm curious if you think part of this is because the thing is like one thing that I've heard from doctors is that a lot of people come in looking for a pill, the easy solution. And if the doctor starts like, oh, have you, and I mean, I've heard actually, now that I think about it, specific people who get mad at doctors where the doctor's like, have you tried sleep and rest? And then like, and they're like, who is this person? I know how to live my life, blah, 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 blah. Give me a pill. Do you know what I mean? Like, I wonder how much of this is not us, but you know what I mean? Like us as in patients pushing for that versus the system. Like, what I'm saying is like, is it the system that we have to change or is it just the people's opinion? Like if more people went there and hey, like it said, hey doc, help me live a better life as opposed to just giving me a pill. I'll take a pill if that's the last option, right? If that saves my
Yeah.
life, but don't have that be the first option. Like, do you think it's the people that we need to address first?
Both.
Both? Yeah,
You
yeah,
have a,
yeah.
yeah, you have a society that's the bulk majority of people have generally low intelligence and are impulsive.
Right. And
That's like
lazy.
the worst combo. That's like the worst combo ever.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Generally uneducated and impulsive, and then being surrounded by people exactly like that, which makes in their environment, you know, their family circle or their friend circle, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, you're totally right. I mean, I've had doctor friends. They're like, well, if I don't give them this, they leave me a bad Yelp review,
Right.
and then also because of just the unfortunate circumstance, and I kind of blame the doctors a little bit for not forming a solid union because medical doctors, they tend to be kind of like introverts, you know, they form their little bubbles and they're really kind of dispersed and don't have like a strong union. So basically what ended up happening was just like MBAs and lawyers run the medical field.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And basically insurance, and I think with AI, it's going to get even worse. Insurance tells the doctor like what's best. You know what I mean? They
Right.
don't see, they're looking at paper and numbers. They don't see that patient right in front of them. And that's so important. You know what I mean? And basically, like you mentioned a little bit earlier on, if they don't follow like a certain script and something doesn't go right, then the medical boards won't protect them in a liability suit. You know what I mean? Because, well, the medical board said, if they have this, you got to give them this, but you
Right.
gave them this.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you went off the books and now it's on you. And just the pressure of having so much student debt and you know what I mean, and already invested
Yeah.
so much time, it's kind of gets
Yeah.
everyone to comply with that kind of like doctors don't even like this. They complain about it often. And I think it's a little bit their fault at the end of the day because they're smart people and they're very hardworking. And most of them at least enter the field caring. They might not be caring after a few years after they find out how the field really works now. And they kind of lose their passion. But if they formed like a
Mm-hmm.
solid union, they can take back their power, you know, and take it away from like a lot of these lawyers and MBAs that literally have like no clue about how to treat patients properly. You know what I mean? They're just kind of looking at they're just kind of looking at money and paper, basically.
Yeah, and it's very much I think the whole exactly what you said. The insurance thing really turns. Yeah, it takes it away from the medical professionals and gives it more to the lawyer types, to the MBA types. Even if they have a degree in, if they understand like the medicine side of it, it kind of shifts the power in the other direction. One thing that's interesting with AI, and now we're getting a little bit more into futuristic sci-fi, what might happen in the future kind of territory. I just want to kind of like label that because like we've been talking about right now, kind of like how things are in reality right now on the ground. One thing that I am extremely excited about is Google DeepMind. So they developed AlphaFold. A lot of people probably heard about it. Demis Hassabis and one other member, they won the Nobel Prize for chemistry for their work with AlphaFold. AlphaFold is just an incredible achievement in so many different ways, but what's interesting was it was able to kind of predict the 3D structures of proteins. And proteins are, of course, the building blocks, basically, of life. So amino acids, proteins, they're like these little factories. Everything that we think of as life is generally, like it's pretty much all of it is protein and its function. It's how we breathe, see, eat, move. It's a protein somewhere doing that. And this thing has some abilities to predict how these things form to give them the functions that they do. Because like it's very easy for us to see the amino chain, whatever they use it, the ABC, whatever, whatever, like the amino chains. But the 3D structure is what humans had trouble grasping. Then comes AlphaFold, and boom. And what it allows them to do is study how things work at that sort of protein level. And they call it proteomics, like genomics for DNA. This is proteomics for studying of the protein. And again, this is theoretical. I'm not saying that this is how things will unfold. I hope this is how things unfold. But with a lot of the drugs now and before, how we sort of approach that discovery is the FAFO method, right? F around and find out. So we test something on 1,000 people or monkeys or whatever animal first, and then we see the results. But the thing is, it's not like that medicine that takes away your headache. It just does that one thing magically, just like flips that one switch and nothing else. That's a fairy tale. It does a boatload of things that we don't fully understand. And one of them takes away your headache. So like, oh, this little compound is what we take for headaches. We have no clue about all the downstream effects. Just like you're talking GLP-1, you know what I mean? Recent, like, oh, it loses fat. Oh, okay. What else? What other 50 things does it do that we don't know about? With this new approach, again, this is the future, this is the theory, but they're hoping that they're going to be able to create specifically the changes. It's not even necessarily medicine, but like, what is it? The sickle cell disease. I think they used it, or there's a million different things out there where somebody has disease because there's like a slight change in how their protein, one of the many proteins in their body, one type functions, and it contributes to debilitating disease, them being unhealthy. I think AI is going to help us unlock how to do these interventions that aren't using foreign bodies, chemicals, drugs to be put into the system that carpet bomb something, and we just notice that it has this one effect that we like. This is going to be more like looking at how our body works, and if you have some deficiency because of you lost the genetic lottery or whatever, like there's some, if you're able to tweak it and it works like a normal, quote unquote, normal human being. I'm curious what you think about that. Do you still see that as a unnatural intervention, or do you think that's a little bit closer to what you're trying to achieve? Like, would you feel more comfortable about that versus giving people medicine, or where do you fall on that spectrum?
I gotta think about it, Wes. I don't know regarding that question. I'm not like anti-medicine. I've
Sure.
had
No.
laser eye surgery.
Yeah.
I remember I got a really bad ear infection in Hawaii that kind of spread to my jaw the next day. I couldn't even open my freaking jaw. And
Yikes.
I used antibiotics and kind of some steroid drops. And without that, I probably, who knows, maybe would have died, just from something that simple. The problem with I have with medicine is it's like, again, like a first resort to like literally not changing anything the person's doing. And then on top of that, for pretty much 99% of people, it's used as a crutch to not change the behaviors that led to disease XYZ. But the problem is like for high blood pressure, that was super common, number one killer in the US with 800 plus thousand deaths. Okay, like you have high blood pressure, too much tension in your life, hypertension. And you go to the doctors, they're like, here, take this blood pressure medication. Okay, it might plummet your blood pressure numbers, like quite quickly. But the problem is the belief system, that kind of mind virus that led to the acceptance of certain behaviors that led to the high blood pressure in a long enough time frame will lead to a myriad of mental and physical health challenges throughout your whole entire life. Then and if that's your only strategy, then, in a few years, you need to be on 2 medical drugs, and then a few years later on 3, and then 4. And this is why you get the average 50-year-old that's on 3 plus medical drugs. And you look at them and they don't look well, like at all. You would think the more medical drugs they're on, the better they look and feel. But it seems like the more medical drugs they're on, the worse they look and feel. Almost every time. Like, you don't even have to take my word for it. It's the weekend. go outside anywhere and just take a look at people. You know what I mean? It's like not normal for people to look this way. And then you can chat to people and you can see just the more medical drugs someone is on, take a good look at them and you'll see they just don't look well.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I got this from someone else, but if all these quick fixes worked, it would all be fixed by now because the US is nothing but quick fix marketing for US healthcare. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And they clearly don't work because the right now, as I mentioned when I was a guest on your show, Americans are like mentally and physically the sickest humans in all of human history. I don't mean this like in an offensive way. I just want people to kind of, if we don't start talking about this honestly, 90% of people remain in that problem unaware stage and
Mhm.
never progress to the other three stages. You know what I mean? And then there are whole industries that take advantage of these people. You know what I mean? Like wrongfully.
Mhm.
And I wish the solutions those industries brought worked. Just the problem is they don't work. They
Yeah.
just provide false hope for people.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree 100%, and I'm hoping that AI will accelerate scientific discovery to the point where people will have access to the best health care available. And by healthcare, I don't mean specifically medicine or this or that, like the best available. Because for somebody, the best available is going to be eat healthy food, move, and sleep. For another person that has a specific condition that they might die if they don't take some medical intervention, that's the best available. Well, plus, plus eat right, move. I don't think for anyone that's the wrong advice. But I agree with you that a lot of times doctors won't say that. They're like, here's a pill. They're not going to say you should be always. The default is try to live a more natural life, natural food, natural sleep cycles, day night cycles. That should be ingrained. That should be the staple. And then if you're going to die, like you were saying with that ear infection, yeah, I'm glad that you have that medicine, all that stuff, obviously, because without that's where that intervention is needed. But the chronic medication, year after year after year after year, being used as a crutch, I wish we knew always how to have a better solution. You know what I mean? And I think understanding is where that starts. Yeah, but I mean, I love what you're doing, and that's always what I've been kind of trying to focus more on. But I also find that it's so hard to find qualified advice online because that's where a lot of people go. Read some blogs, read that. I think that working with somebody like you that knows what they're doing and does the one-on-one treatment, I think is very important. I think we've read a lot of the same books. What is that one book about? Was it biodynamic farming where you sort of like have the crop rotation or something like that with the chickens and the this and then that? I don't know if we were the same book, but we were talking about something that is very, very similar, where like recently I got some chickens like in March, little chicks, and now they started laying eggs like 5 days ago. So I am now, or over the next few weeks, they'll ramp up production, so to speak. And so I'll move from eating from the store to having my own eggs here that are produced by chickens that I know what I'm feeding them. I know that they can run around the backyard, you know what I mean? And then peck at the bugs, and like, I know what's going into them. I know their health. I know everything. And the eggs that are going to come out, I think, are going to be much more nutrient dense and closer to nature than anything that you can get at the store. Right. So that's sort of one step that I've taken. Yeah. I don't know where I was going with that. The thing that I'm struggling with right now is the workouts. Just working out, staying active, just due to the work amount, like the amount of work that I have to do. That's something that I've been really struggling with. Is there anything that you would suggest for people like that? Like, how do you move? How do you get back into it without, you know what I mean? If you're just seriously busy.
Yeah, I mean, the only way to provide good answers is to have that person right in front of you and to know their specific circumstance because there are no absolutes. in any advice, you know what I mean? So one thing is like people go online, you mentioned, to seek for advice, right? I mean, it's important to know, like, even in the 1 in 50 chance you run into an extremely competent person, they never met you personally. They don't know your exact situation, your core values, even what's important to you. The nuanced stressors of your day-to-day schedule. Do you have like one kid? Do you have two kids? Are they both well-behaved kids? Are they not behaved kids? You know what I mean? All these things kind of tax the central nervous system in different ways, and thus require different advice. And also, like, for example, with the weight challenged individual, let's say you have like two twins, um, and they're both 30 pounds overweight, but the reason one is 30 pounds overweight is most likely completely different from the reason the other is 30 pounds overweight. So in order to meet the problem at its correct level, the approach must be completely different for a lot of parts of the journey. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, if I had to just do broad sweep general advice, which again is I try to stay away from, but like, you don't, and it depends on what the person is trying to do. Are they trying to lose weight? Are they trying to maintain muscle? Are they already lean, et cetera, et cetera? Um, I would say like with 4 workouts a week, I have power block adjustable dumbbells at home and an adjustable bench. That is literally all you need. With dumbbells, only your imagination is the limitation. You know what I mean? Even with a flat dumbbell press, you could do like pronated grip, neutral grip, semi-neutral grip, supinated grip.
Yeah.
Then the bench inclines and declines through various different angles. Then you can change the tempos, et cetera, et cetera. You don't need much. You don't need a fancy gym either. The muscle is kind of dumb. Like the bicep, it just knows how to flex and extend. Whether it's flexing and extending here or flexing and extending over there, it doesn't know the difference. You know what I mean? So you don't need anything fancy or a fancy gym. Um, Consistency is always very important. Just unfortunately, just the human mind and body, they're very high maintenance activities. You know what I mean? So if you don't have consistent practices in place, it's almost kind of like not worth doing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's also kind of at the mental level discouraging because you make some gains and progress and then you take a month off, you kind of lose everything. And then you kind of have to start, you know what I mean? It's kind of, imagine building your business for 3 months and then you kind of lose everything and then have to build it up and then you lose everything. There's so many times you could do that before you're like, you know what? I'm just going to quit.
I first of all agree 100%. And for people that are watching, that I mean, some of the people, like, I'm gonna have people from my channel watch this, because people that listen to Eugene, they know his background. For people that don't, I know this person. I've seen the physical transformations that he's created for people, and they are, in a word, shocking. I don't know if we're allowed to post some, because I mean, I'm sure it's your private clientele. Like, we'll see, we'll see. But the before and afters that I've seen for Eugene's clients, they are like out of this world. And then knowing that these are real people, not cherry picked from like a million clients, from his, like, it's real results made for real people. Just wow. And actually, when way back in the days when we were kind of lived in the same area, like, me and my friend worked out with him, and the results that I saw were extremely impressive. For myself, so I can attest to that. The other thing is what you're saying about consistency, I think, is like so key. Last year, I started working out, and I was built a little gym in my garage. Daily, I would work out, and it got to the point where missing a day was unthinkable. Not going in there, at least doing a few reps here and there. Some days were less of a load, some days were heavier of a load, but it got to the point where missing a day was like unthinkable, and I felt great. My body felt like it was like this furnace of just like burning energy, like go, go, go. And one day, some family members came. There was these two teenagers that I did something stupid because I guess I was trying to impress them or something. I don't know. I was like, I'm cool. I'm like the cool old guy. And we rented a dirt bike, which I've never in my life drove a bike or a dirt bike. And believe it or not, I fell off of it. Shocker,
Wow.
right? Wow. No one saw that
Man, I
coming.
never heard that happen ever. You're like the one person in all of America that ever happened to, you
Who
know?
fall who falls off of bikes, especially when they're just trying to learn? They take it out in the middle of a desert and go riding. Thinkable. But I did, and I was fine. But I had like black and blues on the side of my body, hit the ribs and stuff like that. I remember I got home, I'm kind of sore, and I'm like, I can't miss a workout day. That was my first thought. I was like, wait, I can't, because I've been working so hard, so diligently for so long that I was like, it felt, the mind is like, felt like a loss, like you're losing something important. Skipping a workout became, my mind was so against skipping a workout or losing those days that it was almost like painful. It was like losing money, or losing a car, losing a love, not like losing a loved one, not on that level, but it was something your
It could
mind,
be on that level.
it could, yeah, yeah. But your mind goes, no, don't you dare. Like, we need this. Get in there. So I went in there and I found like one or two exercises that I could do without massive pain. And, I didn't push it. Obviously, I didn't do anything foolish, but I wanted to get a workout in without hurting myself. And just, I did. And then, after I recovered, I kept doing it until later that, God, I sound like such a, then they showed up like 6 months later and we were in the backyard tossing a football around. So we were tossing a football around, and then later the next day, like I felt a little bit of a pain, and I was like digging something in my backyard with a shovel, and 2 days later, my entire shoulder kind of locked up, and it was just like, oh, there was a lot of pain, and I had a hard time working out. I had a hard time doing anything, and I stopped. I stopped working out. I did the one sort of original sin or whatever, like the thing you're not supposed to do. I stopped. And since then, like that whole thing just went out the window, and I had a really hard time getting it back. I know it's all my fault. I know it's just all in my mind. I can get back to it and power through it. But I'm just saying, like, I think what you're saying is so important. It's that consistency, because once you develop consistency, your mind, body, everything is just like, you keep doing it. And then if you stop, it's really hard. I think we just get locked into whatever we're
Mhm.
going in. So yeah, just to kind of like give my 2 cents on that.
Yeah. I mean, in that situation, I would have just doubled down on leg and core exercises
Yeah,
until like my shoulder kind of healed or
yeah,
settled down a bit, and then kind of slowly phase back into upper body workouts. That way you can still keep going and actually make really good progress. Um, so that's kind of what I do. Generally, also like a good injury prevention skill is like if something feels weird that day during the training session, of course you want to do kind of like a quick audit. Was my technique? If it was, then you kind of improve the technique. But if you're still feeling that kind of pain and ache, just skip that movement, create some kind of substitute movement that doesn't cause any pain. Yeah, that way you get the right amount of volume during that workout. And then, come back to it the next day and it'll probably be gone and you could work out injury free. That's huge for injury prevention, just doing that one thing, being consciously aware of that. And deload weeks are huge. I do that once every 4 weeks where you purposely just do like, 50 to 60% of the intensity that you normally would
hmm
do. That's great for injury prevention and central nervous system management and stuff of this sort. So all these little kind of tools, once the person is presented with, they have to use to stay consistent. You know what I mean? Even when they have small setbacks, like a shoulder sprain, and stuff, you could be like, oh, like I'll just train legs like 3 times a week with core. That way I
yeah,
can still get my 4 or 5 workouts in and kind of keep those patterns still in my schedule,
yeah,
Because yeah, I mean, it sucks. It's kind of like you can be an Olympian and you take like 2 weeks off, man. It doesn't even look like you worked out like ever in your life. I'm kind of exaggerating here, but that's kind of how it works, So you got to have those. The first thing is you got to figure out like, what do I need to change in my external internal environment to be at least extremely consistent with 4 workouts a week. 4 is like way more than enough for pretty much anyone that's not like training for the Olympics or being like an MMA champion, or just if you want to look good, if you want to feel good, that's it. You don't need, and it's like an hour a session. You don't need anything more than that.
yeah. And one thing that I was extremely impressed with as a result of that was, so it was so bad that I had to go to physical therapy, so to an actual whatever, licensed, educated, whatever, one of those people who he runs his own clinic. He's got several other people working underneath him. He has college students from the local college that come in there to learn from him and stuff like that. So he seemed like he's really very high quality. And the first day, so he's like testing my shoulder. He's like, "How does this feel? How does this feel?" And then I think based on how my range of movements were, he understood where I guess he called it an impingement or something like that, or I forget the exact terminology, but he said, "Okay, so based on everything, I think this is what's happening. Tell me how this feels." And he kind of twisted my arm a little bit. And I just, at the top of my lungs, like cussed. Like I didn't want to, I didn't mean to. It was just the most incredible pain. Like my whole body went like numb. It was like blah, because it was like whatever, like bone on bone, or I don't know what, but it was just wow, did it hurt? And he's like, "Okay, that confirms it." First of all, I was kind of mad at him in that moment. I'm like, "You can't warn me, you can't whatever," but apparently he can't, because then people brace against it or whatever. So he has to. That's one of the apparently, I don't know if this is true or not, or he just loves hurting people, but apparently that's one of the diagnostics. Like, does that particular thing cause pain? Boy, did it. And then for 2 months or so, I kept doing the most basic, simple exercises, right? No heavy weights. It's like I felt very light or whatever, but it's just movements. And I was shocked, because 2 months later, that entire pain, that entire whatever was the problem, it was just gone. And I couldn't believe it. And the fact that they tape up your arm a little bit, and the fact that that removes like 90% of the strain, like I was just so impressed with what they were doing over there. I don't know if you have experienced with that, but man, was that a game changer for me.
No, I've never had a like physical therapy for the shoulder. I have read like some studies like in the past regarding injury recovery,
Hmm.
and oftentimes if you just kind of identify the pain triggers and identify what the person is doing to cause those pain triggers, that's more than enough to heal like 99, like a gargantuous amount of injury.
What,
Just that's it.
so
Yeah, just
it's so.
and then also
Mm.
reinforcing with good dietary practices, so that because like I mentioned before on your podcast, your body and mind is made out of food, so you got to feed it high quality food if you want a high quality body and mind.
It's interesting what you're saying, because in the first or second day that I was there, they put some tape just around this area, and so I had a lot. I had pain lifting my arm. They put some tape, not like support tape, just some
Hmm.
tape,
Yeah.
and I lifted my arm, and the pain was gone. And I could not understand it. Like, I've never experienced anything in my life. I'm like, why would taping something completely get rid of the pain? And how he explained to me is like the proprioception, like you feeling your body just has more signals. So somehow it like adjusts it. But man, what you're saying kind of makes sense, because it was like, it was a mind over matter type of thing. Because it's like, why is lifting my arm hurt so much? But like you put a couple band-aids on top of the skin and it does, like, that doesn't make any sense. But it worked.
Well, Wes, I think this is a good podcast, man. I'm gonna go hang out with the parents here on the weekend,
Nice.
but dude, I think your channel is super cool. It's
Thank
what
you.
I use to keep in touch with AI news. I know I text you like, "Hey, cool episode." Um, and yeah, it's good to stay in touch. Thank you for the friendship over the years. I always appreciated it and stuff like that. So
Yeah, this was an amazing podcast. It was so fun catching up. Thank you for having me on. And yeah, for people that are interested, I gotta say, I can definitely kind of vouch the results that I've had. This was a long time ago, so I'm sure you just kept getting better and more informed. But at least from like the workout perspective, that was, man, I got to figure out how to get back into that shape. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on. This was a lot of fun. Hopefully, people found value from this. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one.
thank you, Wes.